What's going on at the Whitmers? No idea. You suppose they're all crammed in that little house? Wonder what they're doing. You think it's important?
Important? It just happened to be one of the most important things to happen in almost 2,000 years. Something all the prophets had testified would go forth boldly, nobly to all the world. It was the restoration of the kingdom of God on the earth, the Church of Jesus Christ. Some of the greatest events in the history of the world began in very humble places, and this was no exception. April 6, 1830 was the exact date the Lord told Joseph to restore his church. About 40 people from Palmyra, Harmony, and Colesville were gathered tightly inside the Whitmer's small farmhouse in Fayette, New York. It was only about 700 square feet. Talk about your tiny house. No kings, presidents, or galactic emperors were there. Just humble people, mainly farmers, planting a seed that would grow and spread through the whole earth. Following the laws of New York to establish the church, 6 men wrote and signed the necessary document. But even more important than following the laws of the land, the Lord's church was restored according to His commandment. Joseph began the meeting. I invite all present to humbly kneel and join in prayer, asking for the Lord's Spirit to be present. After the prayer, he asked, those who can accept Oliver and me as your teachers, and who are in favor of organizing a church, please raise your hand. Deeply humbled, Joseph saw every single person raise their hand in agreement. One of the most profound parts of the day occurred when they officially administered the sacrament for the very first time in God's restored church. Perhaps a little unsure about how they should do it, they followed the example found in the Book of Mormon to administer the emblems of the sacrament, and they used the same prayers we still use today. The whole day was an incredible spiritual feast with this little flock worshiping, praising, prophesying, and rejoicing together. 4 years later, Joseph would tell them, you know no more concerning the destinies of this church and kingdom than a babe on its mother's lap. This church will fill North and South America. It will fill the world. Inconceivable! Today, this prophecy is still being fulfilled with worldwide membership in the millions and members found in almost every single country. There are nearly 4 times more temples around the world today as there were people in that room in 1830. How would those original 40 people in that tiny farmhouse feel if they could see a general conference in the conference center? And how would we feel when we see the growth of the church in, say, 100 years? Mind blown! Like many others, after the service, Joseph's parents, Lucy and Joseph Sr., asked to be baptized. Helping him from the water, Joseph embraced his father and emotionally exclaimed, "Praise to my God that I live to see my own father baptized into the true church of Jesus Christ." Joseph was understandably thrilled and relieved to be united. Joseph Sr. had been raised with a strong belief in a loving God, but he'd never felt like he should join any of the local churches. Now, however, the Spirit of God witnessed to Joseph Sr. that this was the truth he'd waited for. You see, Joseph Sr. had grown up in New Hampshire in a very large, religious, close-knit family. His dad, Asa Smith, was a powerfully built farmer who'd served in the Revolutionary War and believed in freedom. He loved to gather his family together to discuss religion. He believed that Christ was sent to save everyone on earth, and not just Christians. Unfortunately, most local churches didn't really agree with that viewpoint. Asa would also tell his family of a strong feeling he had. He felt that God was going to raise up a prophet in his family that would be a great benefit to mankind. Providentially, before he died, Asa read and believed the Book of Mormon and rejoiced that his grandson, Joseph Jr., had been called as the Lord's prophet. Now, in the spring of 1829, before the church could be restored, the Lord asked Oliver Cowdery to draft a constitution for the new church. Oliver based it on the doctrine and ordinances he found in the Book of Mormon. He worked on it for an incredibly long time to have it ready before April. After some back and forth about what should be included, he and Joseph presented it to the Lord, and the Lord amended it according to what he wanted. Many of the basic doctrines, guidelines, and ordinances for the church are in the Constitution. No, not that Constitution. This Constitution for the Church is found in Doctrine and Covenants, section 20. Now, since a picture is worth 1,000 words, let's draw what it shows. Of course, Christ is the foundation of the Church. Some of the pillars include the plan of salvation and the first principles and ordinances of the gospel, including specific prayers for baptism and the sacrament. Then there's the calling of prophets, seers, and revelators, which have authority from God. This Constitution also gives the basic organization and procedures to run the church. And finally, it defines the different offices in the priesthood, including apostle, elder, teacher, and deacon. It looks magnificent and contains the basics that will ultimately lead us to the Lord's temple. Now, this Constitution was pretty short compared to our current church handbook. That tiny group of believers would have been completely overwhelmed if they'd received everything all at once. I mean, they weren't ready for weekly youth activities and sunbeams. Like us, they needed instructions to come gradually, a little at a time. In fact, the Lord continues to reveal truths for His church slowly, line upon line. Christ's church was again on the earth, and that small seed planted on that tiny farm in the middle of nowhere continues to grow forth to cover the world. Speaking of growing, in our next episode, we'll learn about a couple of the church's growing pains. Thanks for watching. If you feel like this video has helped you on your path towards truth and Christian discipleship, share it and subscribe to the channel. And click on the little alarm bell to get notified when new videos come out. Most importantly, go study the scriptures for yourself.